Welcome to another episode of Scotch Conversations, where we explore the ideas, challenges and initiatives that shape life here at Scotch. Today, we're diving into a topic that touches every student, every teacher and every family connected to our community, mental health. It's something we talk about more than ever, and yet it remains one of the hardest things for young men in particular to openly discuss. To help us unpack this, I'm thrilled to be joined by Jon Marginis, lead psychologist here at Scotch, who brings a wealth of experience. Jon, thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks so much for having me.
Perfect. So, if we'll crack onto it, first question for you is, why did you become a psychologist?
It was really interesting. So before I decided that I wanted to be a psychologist, I actually wanted to be a lawyer. I wanted to be a lawyer actually from when I was really young. And I basically went to a uni open day with a mate who was pretty keen on being a psychologist. So he went to, we sort of took turns. So I went to see the law one first and he came with me. And then I went to the psych one with him. When I went to do the law one, like, it looked pretty good, looked pretty interesting, kind of lined up with what I thought. He went and did the psych one and I thought, this sounds really interesting. He came away and we walked out of the double doors and he was like, I don't want to do that. And I was like, that sounds really interesting. So it was one of the things where, like, I heard about it, didn't think too much of it. And then when it came to sort of putting in like preferences when I was back in school, I actually just sort of had a thought of, well, I thought that was really interesting. I always thought I wanted to be a lawyer. Why don't I just delve a little bit deeper? I have no psychologists in my family. No one works in mental health in my family. And then I actually swapped my preferences because I was like, this sounds really interesting. I actually think I might give this a go. So when I actually said to my family and my friends that I actually think I want to go do psych, everyone was quite shocked because it was like law up until from like when I was a little boy. Like, I thought when I was a little boy, I wanted to be a judge, but you know, you learn you have to be a lawyer first. And then it was sort of out of interest. And I always thought, you know, if I don't like this, then I can always, you know, go and do law or swap out. But, you know, it was something where I didn't know any psychologists. It sounded like such an interesting topic, such an interesting career that I thought, why not? And then it kind of just really sped up from there of the interest and the desire to be one just continued to grow and grow and grow.
No, awesome. It's really quite incredible how different your journey was from how you first imagined it to where you are now. Have you always worked with boys and men? Is that something you've specialised in, or is that something you've more turned to as you've started working at Scotch?
So I think for me, when I started in psych, like, I distinctly remember like sitting in a lecture theatre and there was psych students and there were other allied health professional like students in there as well, so OT, speech and things like that. And there weren't many like blokes in there. You were like statistically outnumbered, which, you know, for me at that point in time, I didn't actually realise that there weren't many guys going into psych. The guys, we kind of almost all flocked together in some ways, which usually happens in a situation like that. We all sort of stuck together. And then as I was going through the course, there became less and less males in the course, so they move into different things. And then when I thought more and I learnt more about psych and men and the stigma that's there, it became really apparent to me that it, you know, when I was doing the course and even still now, there still is that stigma there. We know that traditionally females and women are better at talking than men and boys. So for me, as a male, as a man, it was something that I thought, well, this doesn't actually sit well with me. So I then sort of really sprung board further into that, where I was like, right, I want to actually do and work with boys and men. I've worked in other areas, as in like I've worked in other schools, I've worked in other places or other workplaces where you're working with clients or patients that are male and female. But I've always had this desire to work purely with boys and men, which then also resulted in me like kind of in some way specialising in working with boys and men.
Great. I think that's definitely something that's evolving as we move on. Like 20 years ago, you might, or when you went to school 10 years ago, I think you might think, oh yeah, there wasn't too many males there. But I think now as we evolve into the modern day and get a bit older, do you think that perspective is changing?
Yeah, I think so. A few years ago, I did a presentation in Singapore on essentially why men and boys don't talk. So if we look back from when, you know, essentially when a child is born, so when they're a baby, we know that people raise a little girl and a little boy quite differently. We're sort of seeing a lot of movements now, but we know that girls are more encouraged to play with, prams and dolls and that side of things, and boys more go towards cars and trucks and things like that. And sometimes that actually just happens without putting the doll or the truck. It just does. I've seen it firsthand as well. But I think we have seen a big shift. We're seeing, like, even here at Scotch, like, we have a lot of boys who access the service. We are an all-boys school, but even in other places where I've worked, where there's been males and females or boys and girls in another school, we have seen that more boys are willing to go speak to a psychologist. More males are now looking into psychology as a career, which I think is great. I guess from my end to you, I'm really curious about how Black Sock Round came about. Like, I'm a psychologist. I'm really eager to hear about this initiative and more, but could you tell me a little bit more about how you boys sort of came up with it?
Yeah, great. So it was actually, I had a study period 5, and I was walking around the Maths and Commerce building, and I walked past Hudson Weir's classroom. He was a year 12 student at Scotch, and he just ran outside and quickly found me. And it was just as the Brisbane Broncos, an NRL team in Queensland, had launched an all-black rugby kit, and the thought was, nothing is more important than mental health. So we're going to black out all the sponsors, black out everything, so that you only focus on one thing. And Hutto came to me and said, why can't we do this? And it was one of those things where it just immediately felt right. It was like, why haven't we done this? This is such an important cause. We support so many great things in the PSA. And it was like, I'm surprised we haven't already done it. So from there, we had to kind of meet together, think, what did we want to achieve from this and how we were going to achieve it. Obviously, supplying the whole school or all the first teams with jerseys with only a couple of weeks left of the season probably wasn't feasible. So we thought, where can we go to next? And we thought, socks. It's a subtle reminder which doesn't take attention away from everything that's going on that day, but sparks a conversation. I think that was a big goal. We said when we promoted it, if we can just make one conversation, that means we've met our goal. And I think that's really where it came from. Just going back to you and with that Scotch, with your work, for boys, where can the boys go and who can they go to if they need support? What's on offer and how is it linked to everyday school life?
So I guess at Scotch we've got 4 psychologists in total, including myself, so it depends on what sub-school the boy's in. In junior school, I'm the psychologist in the junior school. In middle school, it's Miss Lorimer. In the senior school, there is myself and 2 other psychologists, and we're based on houses. If we talk about it from a senior school perspective, we're really respectful that when you are in the senior school, we can actually do something called an assessment of if someone's a mature minor. So we do love the idea of your head of house or your parents being involved, but we can also do the assessment to see if you understand the sort of laws around consent and confidentiality. So boys can come directly to us. They can go to their house head and speak to them, who can then link them in with us, because it might be something that the house head might say, look, like, I can offer you these sort of strategies. Do you want to give them a go first? The boys can also just actually come to the residence in the senior school, which is where we're located, to ask for an appointment. Or they can always email us, or if they see us around, they can just always ask and reach out.
Yeah, awesome. And then just touching on that, you mentioned a little bit, do many boys access you, and what do you think about boys' mental health at this current time?
So in my role as lead psychologist, I keep a record throughout the school of who comes in, how many times they access the service, what issues they present with, or why they come in. And I guess if I reflect on the data from the last few years, so in 2023, 18% of the school population had accessed psychological services. Last year we hit 23.5%, which from my eyes is pretty amazing when you think 1 in 4 to 1 in 5 boys in a school population in an all-boy environment feel comfortable to link in with a psychologist. This year we're sort of seeing similar numbers that will probably hit around that similar range. So I think in regards to how we're accessed, why we're accessed, I think boys are starting to become more and more comfortable with the notion of, I can go in and talk to someone and it doesn't necessarily have to be this big thing anymore. So I think we're seeing a really positive shift in boys wanting to access, counselling, or wanting to actually talk to someone or bounce something off someone else.
I think that's great. Yeah, it's just a great reflection on the services we have here and how boys are starting to feel more comfortable in using these services? Because I know I've been at Scotch for quite a while now, and I've only just recently learned about the availability of all these services and the benefits they have.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's awesome.
And I think part of it is like when we look at mental health in general, we know that we constantly are being told like statistics. You know, you boys would learn it in certain subjects, or if you're doing a project, or you know, with Are You OK Day coming up, we hear the amount of you know, the number of stats of, you know, 1 in 4, 1 in 5 people will experience like a mental health issue or mental health disorder. And by no means am I suggesting, you know, from last year that 23.5% of boys that accessed us had a mental health diagnosis or disorder.
Yeah.
But what that is saying is that if part of your school population is happy or willing to go talk to someone, and that's, you know, technically 1 in 4, 1 in 5,
yeah.
you're actually capturing a great number. And that's not even the boys that have private psychs, because people are obviously, they feel more comfortable speaking to someone externally, they can.
Yeah.
But I think it's really positive that the shift of going in and talking to someone is really reducing. I guess I'm really eager to hear, back to sort of the black sock round, you know, it was a really good initiative, and I think the notion of using like black socks instead of, you know, blacking out jerseys, that would have been like a really, really hard to sort of do. So I think the black sock round sounds really amazing. Do you feel like since that round that anything's changed, I guess, in regards to boys speaking about their mental health from like, I guess, you as a student perspective?
Well, I think what that round has done, and I think Hudson and I both being leaders at the school, is showing that even some of the older boys and boys that you might think are perfect and everything's going well, that's not actually the case. I think more boys are coming to us, opening up, saying, oh yeah, I had a really tough day today, I'm actually not feeling all right. And it's just sparking those conversations.
Yeah.
And then even just after some of the games, you can hear people talking on the sidelines, oh, why are they wearing black socks, you know? And I think that's what we wanted, because with the black socks, it's so different to what, you know, Scotch's maroon socks. And by people asking, why are they doing this? It really has created that awareness. And I think linking back to your question, I think it's been amazing. All the boys have gone out, definitely, I reckon at least once a day, just the topic comes up, like, how are you going? How's everything? Like, the exams have been really tough. You've had lots of tests on. Is everything going okay? And I think we've seen a huge shift, and I think that was really just our goal. So yeah, to be perfectly honest, I think the response from the boys has been incredible. Been really rewarding.
And I think that's really good to hear, because I guess from my perspective, or what we know is that boys, you know, it's really from probably around middle school age, that's when they stop going to mum and dad and they start actually asking or talking to their mates, or wanting to talk to their mates. And I guess if there's this notion of how do I bring it up, something like the black sock round sounds like it's really been a bit of a springboard for boys to actually talk to each other about it. And sometimes what myself and the other psych see is that sometimes we have boys come and see us, not necessarily about themselves, but they're like, I'm actually worried about my mate who's told me this. I'm glad they've told me, but I don't really know what to do, or how to, you know, how do I get them to come and see you, or how do I do that? So I think it's definitely brought up that conversation in a really like natural way.
And I think what's so good about Scotch is the mateship that we have. I think I've personally been to a few different schools around the world, and I think what stands out for me at Scotch is the ability for boys from, say, year 9 to year 12 to have real open conversations. And I think that's something that's so important around mental health. I think just building on what you said before about if you do see a mate that might be struggling, might have had a hard couple of weeks, maybe a few things didn't go his way, if they are concerned about them, what do they do? What do you recommend that they can do to help support them?
Yeah. So I think usually what we see is helpful is if you've noticed something in a mate, or you've noticed something in a friend, or even if, you know, a parent's watching or listening to this, if they've noticed something in their son, it's about, if you're going to ask them, being in a space where you're ready to actually hear them. As in, like, if you're asking them almost like between classes, it gives that really small window. And, you know, you hope that that mate would then say, oh, like, can I talk to you about it later? But what we usually see is somebody's more likely to talk when they have the chance to actually talk more about it than something short. Yeah. So, obviously, you know, boys talk face to face. Sometimes they do it through message or through chat. So I think it's, having that time or that space ready. Also, if you know that the other person's going to be in a space where they can actually respond either, verbally or like through their phone at a time that's going to be good for them as well. It's like the first step.
Yeah.
If they start to say something that you sort of feel like, I actually don't think they are okay, and they might say it or they might be like, yeah, I'm fine. If they just sort of be like, I'm fine, you can always just check back in a couple of days' time and be like, look, you said you were fine, but I'm just checking again. If they open up and say that there have been other things going on, part of it, I think, is sometimes people feel that pressure of, okay, they've told me now, what do I do to like fix it, or how do I actually help them? Mm-hmm. And I think sometimes what we know is that sometimes people just want to be heard, so they actually don't want the solution. We know as guys, we're actually pretty bad at actually not trying to find a solution. We're always trying to fix it. Yeah. So it's actually just hearing what they have to say, and in some ways, just sharing like your own thoughts about what it must be like for that person to go through that. Yeah. But then also see if there's anything that they need from you. Now, even if they say something that you can't actually do or give, it's actually being really open and being like, thanks for sharing that with me, man. Yeah. I actually think it's going to be really worthwhile if we have a chat to John, or if we have a chat to, Joel or James, so they're the other two psychs in the senior school. Or if it's not them, have you told your parents? If you don't feel comfortable with your parents, these are some other organisations such as like Headspace or eHeadspace, which is online, that you can contact or reach out to. Yeah. But what we usually see is that when someone opens up, the main thing that they want is just to be heard. Yeah.
And I think boys really underestimate the actual value of just having a conversation and an open one. Yeah. Even if it's the small things of just saying, how's your day been? How's your week been? I notice you've been really busy. I think even in my personal experiences, when boys do come in to check on me, I find those super valuable. Like, you kind of touched on it before, but as a parent who might be watching this, if they're feeling a little bit concerned about their son, they think, they might be struggling a little bit, what can they do?
So I think it sort of depends on the age of the child, but also in some ways the relationship that the parent has with their child as well, or with their son. So I guess if we think about it, if we're saying that it's pretty standard, mother-son or father-son stereotypical teenage relationship, at the point of sort of like 15 or 16, we're hoping that it's a good relationship, but it's not necessarily always going to be the closest, because we know that 15, 16-year-olds are usually closer with their mates than with their parents. Yeah. But I think part of it as well is parents to have a conversation with their son at a time where it's not rushed, it's not during something that their son really wants to do, or their son's doing something that they really like. It's about when they both have the time to actually have that conversation. And it can go along the lines of like, hey mate, I've noticed this in you. I've noticed that there's been a change. Is there anything you want to talk about? Yeah. And I think sometimes what we see is that boys often will say like, no, or I'm fine, because there's, depending on what it might be, there's sometimes the concern that they're going to get in trouble. So it's also as well for parents to sort of say, look, if something is going on, like I want you to be able to tell me without the fear of consequences. Yeah. Now, everyone's relationship's different with their parents, but what we're hoping is that it can be open and honest. And then there's not necessarily like a consequence if something's gone wrong because of something's happened, but more of a way where the conversation is premised around like, I want to actually have a really open conversation with you. If they're 16, 17, 18, I've noticed these changes that have been happening, or I've noticed this in you. What's been happening? Yeah. So opening it from that sort of point of view.
Awesome. And then going a little bit off script here, I think as the year 11s and 12s and year 10s as well, we're heading into the exam period. I think everyone's putting some long shifts in with studying. Everyone's overwhelmed. Yeah. Is there any advice that you could give to a few of the boys and anyone watching this, how to just balance everything out and make sure your mental well-being is staying, at point? Yeah.
Look, I think when it comes with things like exams and this tail end of, I guess, schooling for a lot of you boys, like in year 12 at least, but also thinking about like year 11s heading into exams and year 10s next week as well. I think part of it is, if you've been doing the study already, that's great. If not, you still have a little bit of time left, so it's not complete disaster over. But I think what's really important is there is that balance there. So if you study with mates or you live near mates, trying to sort of work out what everyone's study schedule is, or someone, at least one person that you're close with, so that you can both sort of tee up your breaks at the same time and you can actually leave the environment that you're studying in. So if you're studying at home or you're studying in the library, actually trying to have a break at the same time where you can like go kick the footy, you can go get bubble tea, or you can like just go out and do something. We're actually leaving the laptop, the books, all of it, so you actually have that circuit breaker.
Yeah.
There is the notion of, put in those long hours, they'll pay off, but also if you're cramming and you're not breaking, your brain isn't able to absorb it anyway. So having a healthy break and actually getting out from your desk, your study, your bedroom is so important.
Yeah, okay. Awesome. And then I think just last question before we wrap up. This was something that I actually only found out the other day, and it's to do with the OSC service.
Yeah.
As someone who's about to become an OSC, I didn't realise you offered these free counselling sessions or vouchers. Could you expand on that a little bit?
So from mine, it started a couple of years ago, and I think, when we think about Scotch College, we think about the school. When I think about psych services, we like to work with you boys throughout your journey here, regardless if you're in, pre-kindy, 3-year-old pre-kindy, or if you're in year 12 at the tail end. At some point, it'd be amazing if you touch base with us.
Yeah.
At the same time, regardless if you have or you haven't, you will leave the school, you'll graduate, and you'll go on and do great things. But what we do know is that being that Scotch College is such a great place with pastoral care, regardless if it's psych services or your head of house or a good teacher, there's a lot of care there. Now, once you leave and you graduate, that's a really exciting time. But being that we are, we're a community for life, we've got those ties there. It was a conversation that I had with Mr. Hindle when he was in his role of Director of Wellbeing, Director of Pastoral Care, Dr. O'Connell, and Nadia Serakowski.
Yeah.
And it was around the time of when we were looking at, okay, well, sometimes when boys graduate and leave the school, sometimes they themselves or their parents would reach out to me once they'd graduated because they just wanted some help or direction of where do I go now? And for me, it sort of thought, okay, well, wouldn't it be great if we could have a service where these now young men could link in, or these older men, regardless of when they graduated, could link in with someone or somewhere where they can have that place to go chat. So the school agreed to, and the OSC agreed to provide 6 free counselling sessions through Access Wellbeing. And it is for the boy who's graduated from the school, an OSC, or anyone who lives within the same household as him. Awesome. So it's a service of where, although you've been at the school and although you've graduated, you can't necessarily access counselling services at school, you're not left high and dry.
Yeah. No, I think that's incredible and a testament to the work that you and your team does at the college.
I think, when I sort of hear about your, and we've touched upon the black sock round, I'm just wondering, do you think that there is anything else that needs to be done? If you think about your time here at the school, your year 12, you're about to leave, is there anything else that you think needs to be done at the school to make this conversation more viable or more likely to happen amongst you boys?
I think it's just understanding that notion that it's okay to not be okay. Kind of like you mentioned before, there's that stigma, especially as males, that we have to be tough, we have to hide our feelings, like it's not cool to cry when you're upset. I think that's something that, especially my team and the leadership group have worked with this year. It's all about making sure that people know that we're here for them.
Yeah.
And like you mentioned with the pastoral care, it's really important that everyone knows. So I think it's really just building on that notion, because Scotch is such a busy place. There's so many things on and there's so many different support networks. And I think it's just, removing that stigma that people think, you're tough, year 12, first footy player. Yeah. You don't have any struggles, you're okay. But it's making sure people know that it's actually okay to not be okay.
That sounds good. Awesome.
Perfect. Well, Jon, thank you so much for your time. It was definitely a great experience for me and hopefully everyone that was watching as well. So we really appreciate you taking time out of your busy day.
My absolute pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.